All right, welcome to Growing Together, a podcast of Central Presbyterian Church. This podcast is about learning to grow together as a family united to Jesus. So, in many ways, this podcast is not unlike being at a family dinner table, around a fire, or any other places families gather. So, welcome. Take a seat and let's get going. Thanks for joining us for the first episode of our new podcast, Growing Together. We're excited to explore what makes Central. I'm Cole Lesher, and I'm a pastor of college and young adults here. And with me is Matt Woodson, the Assistant Director of Student Ministries, and Pam Smith is our communications wizard. And with us as well is Reverend Dr. Clay Smith, Senior Pastor of Central. So it's good to be with y'all. How y'all doing?
Doing great.
Doing good.
Nice.
Pretty good.
Well, we're excited that you're with us, Clay. We're excited to have these conversations. I'm glad that you're our first guest because you get to get the ball rolling, just crushing it here.
There you go.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I'm most excited about in these podcasts is getting to know the guest that's here. I think sometimes we get to hear you, almost week in and week out, right? Preaching, and we get little tidbits of your story, little tidbits of illustrations and stuff. But, some of us may not know you, your story super well. And this gives us an opportunity to you not just to be the preacher guy, or one person said one time, it was like, which one do you have today? The long talk or the short talk? So liturgy or preaching. So you're not just the one who does the long talk, but you're Clay.
That people wish was the short talk. So.
Yeah, well, I think they wish that for all of us. But yeah, so who's Clay? Where are you from? You kind of let us know a little bit about your story.
Well, I was born at a very young age. I'm from Mississippi, and I grew up in this little bitty town in the Mississippi Delta. And on my mom's side, the whole family lived within 10 blocks of each other in this little bitty town in the Delta. And so I was an only child, and yet I grew up with my cousins. We were there all the time together. We'd, play after school or ride bikes, or I had a little go-kart when I was a kid, and my cousins would come over, and one of them would ride with me in the go-kart, and we would chase her sister around in the go-kart. And so we did things we shouldn't have done in hurting the younger cousins. But it was a pretty remarkable place to grow up, in part because my grandfather was the chief of police in that little town. And so that was fun because, I get to have a ride in the police car and get to turn on the siren, but that also meant that, people's eyes are on you all the time. And so it kind of prepared me a little bit, I think, for what does it feel like to be a worker inside the church, whether you're a pastor or staff member, everybody's eyes are a little bit more aware of that person that they see every week. But grew up in that little town in Mississippi. Grew up Southern Baptist. They say Baptists make the best Presbyterians, and there you go. And was very aware of my guilt. I don't know if that was just growing up in a Southern town where there's the Southern Gothic of guilt that just kind of permeates everything, or what else. But I walked the aisle in the Baptist church when I was 6. I truly think I came to know Christ at that point. But I think I got baptized 5 more times after that. Like whenever I'd feel guilty or needy of Jesus, I was like, oh, maybe I just didn't know him before. So, better safe than sorry.
One of them will take. That's
one of them will take. Exactly. I grew up in that Baptist church, went to college at Mississippi State, which is known as the Harvard of East Central Mississippi.
Nice.
If you make your circle small enough,
yeah,
you can be the academic powerhouse.
No dogs.
Studied biochemistry and molecular biology at Mississippi State. I originally planned to go to med school, but the Lord had other plans, and I ended up going to seminary. And RUF, campus ministry, Reformed University Fellowship was a huge influence in my life. Charles Godwin, our congregational care pastor, was an RUF intern when I was a student, and he discipled me for a couple of years when I was in college.
Man, that's cool.
Been lifelong friends, and I was there lurking in Pam and Charles' early dating relationship, and I can tell you stories if you'd like them.
We'll save that for the relationship podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Different
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
And so a big part of my story, I think, was trying to figure out what to do with guilt. As I was growing up, I mentioned that before. And as I think a lot of my formation as a kid was what makes me Christian is that I don't do certain things. Mm-hmm. I don't do the things that the other kids do, which, by the way, I did do those things. I just didn't want to tell you about them.
Yeah.
So, but I thought that negation equaled Christianity. And so I had a lot of deprogramming to do when I got to college and started to really grow in my faith and being discipled. But, living for Christ is about more than not doing other things, but it's about living fully as the human being God created me to be. And it felt like the whole world just opened up to me to begin to think about the Christian faith in that way. And I think that the Lord's used some hard things in my life to kind of shape me in that way, that living for Christ is more than not doing certain things. And one of them was I got married right out of college, and married a woman who had been an intern, RUF intern at University of Alabama, which is like 90 minutes away, maybe 75 minutes away from Mississippi State. And so groups would get together and do stuff, and came to seminary after we married. And then right after I graduated, she left. She walked away from me, walked away from Jesus, walked away from the church. And it kind of left me asking, all right, who am I now? So who am I in trying to deal with this unwanted grief? Where is Jesus in that? And what makes me significant? What makes me valuable? What makes me worth being in relationship with? And all of those things, it felt like the Lord just kind of began to strip away and teach me about what it means to be an object of his affection. When I really didn't have a whole lot else to lean on. And so I've said in sermons before, I felt like the thing I needed the most was the thing that could never be taken away, and that's belonging to Christ. And until most everything else was taken away, I didn't realize that was what I needed the most. Yeah. And that being formed through wounding, the classic Old Testament story, it happens over and over and over again. You're formed through being wounded, and the Lord was gracious enough to kind of do that to me, and began to rebuild my life by bringing Missy into my life and other friends who walked with me through hard times. And that's that vision of being a friend and befriending someone really took root, I think, in those experiences of pain when I was in college. Missy and I got married, right after 9/11. We got married, and she's a cancer survivor, and so she had some woundedness in her own life, and it felt like we were fit to be tender with each other because we've both been wounded in our own ways. And that's been kind of how we've walked through ministry together for these nearly 20 years, is trying to embrace the wound rather than push it off,
Yeah. So you had a first stint at Central, but you did what, church planting right before that in Arizona? Is that right?
Well, when Misty and I got married, I was working at Covenant Seminary. I was the church relations guy and the development director. So I was helping raise money for the school. And that's just part of the wounding for me is, I'm supposed to be the the public face helping to raise money for the institution, and I'm a guy who can't keep my marriage together. And so that was a lot of that, the Lord pulling things out from under me to help me think, you're not significant because of these things you do for me, which has been a lesson I've had to go back to over and over and over. But after we married, we moved out to Arizona, and I was working for Food for the Hungry, relief and development organization that, curiously enough, is headquartered in Scottsdale, Arizona. You don't think about agencies working on world poverty, located in beautiful Scottsdale. But then again, it was an incredible experience for me to be driven into the lives of people who are thinking about living for Christ and drawing people to Christ without the trappings of the developed world. And so again, what is it that Christianity is about? It's more than just not doing these other things. What's a positive, forward-looking vision of being a kingdom citizen? Really, in my imagination, was formed through Food for the Hungry.
Wow, that's awesome.
And then we church planted in Arizona, and then we came back to Central. I was a associate pastor here for about 7.5 years, from 2004 to 11. I was associate here.
Right before I got here, I think, right? You left like 6 months or something before I'd
word had gotten out that you were coming. And so
yeah, this intern guy, get out. Yeah.
We went to Virginia, and we're in Lynchburg, Virginia, at a EPC church there as a senior pastor there, and been back here now. I just started my 5th year, which
that is so crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
Like
long? Wow.
a day. It does not feel like 5 years.
Yeah. On the one hand, it feels like it's been a day, and on the other hand, it feels like this is the most difficult cramming of 15 years into 4 that I've ever had in my life.
Well, yes. When 2020 is 10 years,
exactly.
Add on the rest of it. Oh man. Well, tell us a little bit about your family. So you talked a little about Missy. What about you've talked about Isaiah and Emma a little bit.
Yes. So Missy, as mentioned, she has been a cancer survivor and is biologically not able to have children. And so we're an adoptive family. And Emma is our oldest. She's 17, a senior in high school, a very gifted artist, and looking for where she can continue her art education. That's what she's wanting to study in college. And so we're in the throes of all kinds of interviews and art portfolio submissions and all that kind of fun stuff with her right now. And it's going to be fun to see where the Lord takes her.
Yeah.
And Isaiah is our 13-year-old. And he went to the doctor yesterday, and he's now a little over 5'10" as a 13-year-old.
Wow.
He hits these growth spurts. And by the way, that's by a long shot the tallest person in our family at 5'10". Missy and I now joke about having these 2 very large, tall African-American children and 2 white, tiny hobbit parents for them.
Yeah.
That's our story. And Isaiah is he's just loving life. He's just one of these kids that just is just happy to be here, and it's fun to see him grow up. And so we adopted both of them when they were infants. Emma was 6 months old when we were able to finally adopt her. It was a long, very difficult legal process for her adoption. And Isaiah, we adopted at 7 weeks. And same adoption attorney, and when we adopted Isaiah, he said, this is just a plain old boring adoption, and compared to Emma's complication. I've said to them both at times when it can be difficult to be a parent. I've said to Missy and me and to them, God worked really hard to put you in our family. So it's clear to me that you don't belong to us, but we're stewarding you on behalf of the Lord. And that's kind of changed the way I parent some, I think. In different seasons of life, sometimes it doesn't help at all, but other times it helps me to be reminded that these children, they didn't come from our physical bodies, but they were truly a gift from the Lord. And it's helped. I need object lessons from the Lord because I'm a slow learner on some of those things, and very grateful for them.
Where do you like find delight in them? There's probably a whole host of different areas, but give us an example or two.
I find delight in helping them or in having them tell me why they enjoy the things that they're really good at. So delighting in what they love is kind of where I find delight in them. Like for Emma, she's doing this, submitting her portfolio, and she did this amazing piece that's kind of a riff on Byzantine art. And so I was asking her last night, like, tell me about this piece that you did, this skeleton with gold leaf all around it. What are you communicating about the brevity of life and decorating a skeleton with halos and whatnot? And just having her explain to me what she was communicating and why, it's just really easy to delight in someone, or for me, when I hear her explain things that are going on in the depth of her heart and her soul and the way she's thinking about life. And she expresses herself through her art in a lot of ways. And so that's one of the ways I delight in her. And in Isaiah, I just like watching him run around.
He does that a lot.
He does that a lot. And it's just fun to watch him run around and make jokes and tease people and just have fun in a relationship. So I delight in him that way. So.
Yeah. He's my favorite Instagram influencer. So really into that.
Somebody was talking about another person in our the other day, and Isaiah said, "Who is that?" And Missy said, "Well, you're Instagram friends with her." So, and it's like, well, that doesn't really mean all that much,
Yeah.
Wow,
of course
look
not.
at you.
Yeah.
Look
Kind of
at
a big
you
deal.
go.
Kind of a big deal.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. Hey friends, I want to take a break in our conversation to tell you about My Central. Now, some of you might already know about My Central and have an account, and some of you don't. But I want to encourage you to get it. It is a great resource for us here at Central to grow together, to connect with one another. You can go to our website at centralpres.com, and at the top of the page it says My Central. You click on that and you can sign up there. It is a place where you'll find groups that meet throughout the week, our church calendar, and all sorts of different things that you can use to connect with one another. So I'd encourage you to do that as we grow together. So on with our conversation with Pastor Clay about what ministry looks like here at Central. Oh man. Well, so this season of the podcast, which is funny to say because it's our first podcast, so there's not much to say about that. But this season, this long season,
Thinking ahead. You're just.
Yeah. Of season of 1 of 20, Survivor style, we are we're asking the question why, and I think why is one of the most powerful questions. It could be one of the scariest questions, but it is a question that I find myself asking a lot, and folks I work with regularly asking why. And I think being in a faith that is so old, in the beauty of that, and that faith being passed down to us by our grandparents and parents of the faith and all sorts of, we ask the question why. That's just what we do. And so I think why in the sense of Central is I wanted to ask this question in the different areas that we do ministry, in the different areas that we as a church exist. And I wanted to ask why we do the things we do. But the thing that we need to start with, and it's one of the things you started with when you first got here, was asking the why in the sense of a mission and vision statement. And I think this is really important for us to get to, but I really want you to, I guess, to explain for somebody like me before hearing what you had to say eventually. Like, what is a mission and vision statement? Or maybe what is ours? And then what is one? Or maybe vice versa. I don't know. Switch it up. But help us. All of us have read Heifetz and Lencioni and all those fun stuff. So, yeah.
Right. Well, you hear me every Sunday say our vision statement at the beginning of our sermon time every week. And Central Presbyterian Church seeks the transformation of our lives, our communities, and our world through the renewing work of the Lord Jesus, all to the glory of God. That's our vision statement. And what a vision statement does is it's an aspiration of what you hope this organization could become. So it's kind of looking out into the future to orient the direction, orient the trajectory, orient the growth path for any organization. And it's absolutely vital for any organization, I believe, to have a clear vision statement, because if you don't, what happens is you wind up defining success as wherever you are. Whatever we're doing right now equals success, because you don't have any idea what you're trying to do. And so when I came to Central, that was where I wanted to start, because you guys heard me say this before, but it's in seasons at Central that we do vision by Christmas tree. So that is, if there's room on the tree to add an ornament, you do. And for us as a church, it's felt like if there's room, or if we can create room in the organization to do a new or different or exciting blingy ministry, of course we will. But how do you know if you're actually accomplishing what God brought this group of people together to do, to pursue? And it's a vision statement that helps kind of organize that, coalesce it. And so our vision is all about transformation. It's all about change. I mean, that's one of the reasons I got into ministry. I think I felt called into ministry was because I loved to see how lives are changed, how the direction of people's lives can fundamentally be altered through the power of this gospel. And that's an incredibly exciting thing to see. And that was, part of my own call to ministry. But as we began to work on that question for what's central about that core part of transformation, kind of defined what we wanted to go, where we wanted to go. And that's not exactly the same thing as the mission, though. And vision and mission are different. So the vision sets out the aspiration, the direction, and the mission is how you're going to get there. So what are the particular things that this organization is going to do to try to move as a group, as a body, as an organization in that direction of the vision? And those things can change over time because, if your organization, if a church is growing, then what you had to do to move toward transformation set 10 years ago is probably not what you have to be doing right now. Because if it is, then something's not working. If transformation isn't happening. So the mission and the strategies kind of get altered, iteratively as you keep pursuing that vision goal. And so that was one of the first things I did when I got here was to draw together some of our lay leaders in our church to say, let's talk about vision and mission. Because it really didn't matter a whole lot about what my vision and mission aspirations were for Central, because the church isn't me. It's my job as the pastor, I think, is to facilitate our vision, our mission, this particular people, this body's vision for how God might change us. It might change our city, it might change us, it might change our world through this collection of believers. And that was a lot of fun to go through that process with these folks. There were eight other folks and me, 4 men, 4 women, all deeply involved. Ages ranged widely, and it was a lot of fun to be on that team. We met a lot, talked a lot, argued a little, and came out, I think, with something that helps us to grow, I hope.
Nice. Well, what things have you seen that this mission and vision have already started to impact? Because we're not like super long into it in regards to like, we haven't seen 10 years of how this mission and vision happened, right? But like, what have you seen things that have changed from the Christmas tree approach, right, the ornament approach, to where we are now? Like, what are some of the impacts that exist in ministry that you've seen or experienced?
This is a good example, a podcast that's relationally focused. Transformation's about being in process, right? Transformation's about not presenting to the world or to one another that we're finished products, but we're growing, we're changing, and we're going to try to be honest and candid about that. So that's one thing that I think that just we're a church full of people in process, I think, has begun to kind of seep into the culture, the felt culture of our church. There's a long way to go, but I think we begin to see and experience that a little bit. A few other things are the staff actually talks to one another in ways that how we can plan something that's bigger than just my ministry, but how do we plan for things where we're going together in a certain direction? It's not always that way in churches. And most often it's not that way in churches. Businesses aren't going to survive if all the people in the business aren't pulling in the same direction, and churches can kind of just bump along. And bringing that kind of cooperation in ministries, I think, is a fruit of that vision mission process. Another thing I think is how we want our church to be led, and that is moving toward elders as shepherds, being engaged in the real lives of our real people, rather than just all organic, or I come to church on a Sunday morning hoping just to bump into my buddies. It becomes more, I'm looking for the people that I'm responsible to shepherd. And how do I get close to them? How do I move toward them? That's a very different way for leaders to enter into a large, full sanctuary.
Yeah, absolutely.
To think first, not who are the people that make me the most comfortable, but rather who are the people that I'm responsible to give my life away to? Who are the people I'm responsible to point them to Jesus? That's a very different mindset, and it's incredible to see it work.
Especially in light of a pandemic. I mean, we went from, I don't know what would have happened. I don't know what it would have looked like if we hadn't implemented this model beforehand, to where people actually can be heard, if you don't see them because you're all locked in, I've been super appreciative of kind of that process.
Absolutely. And leaders who bought in, who want to give their time to make the calls and the visits and the emails and the texts and all of those ways to communicate when you're exiled. And it's incredible to see how this leadership team at Central's really taken to being that type of body. Because you're right. I don't know what our church would look like if we didn't have that kind of ministry already going. Or if we tried to build it in the middle of a pandemic, oh my word.
Right.
Yeah. It definitely felt like a providential thing.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah. And just the different ministries that exist, like what you said about moving into more a relational model. Like, we have, grief share, divorce care. We have all these ministries that are relationally driven. Like, hey, people to people, this has been a struggle. Let's talk about it. Growth groups, and different things like that, to where we're trying to be intentional about pursuing one another in the Lord, and being shaped into full people in process as well. Right. I love the phrase "in process" just completely describes my life, and so I hope it does for everyone else, but it's like, I should just get that tattoo like completely in process.
I'll show you something here. I don't think you've ever seen this, but I'm pulling out my business card, and this is what the back of my business card says.
Clay is in process.
In process. I like that.
There you go.
Oh, that is so good. Yeah, we'll get tattoos together, Clay.
There you go.
Yeah. Be the weekend event. Yeah. Pam's in too. Matt, we'll make it happen.
I'll add to my collection.
Yeah. I don't know if we're supposed to, say, whatever,
We can edit this part out.
Yeah,
we can
edit that out. That's fine.
Yeah. Nobody has tattoos here. It's fine. We're Christians. So, well, okay. So mission and vision impacting a lot of what we do drives a lot of the ministries we have, which is really cool. I think being on staff, watching kind of these little inroads that come about. But, also I think what's interesting in our yearly process of implementing this, right? An annual mission and vision statement. So we have this big one, and then we have this, here's what we're going to focus on this year.
Right.
And I would love for you to share, you sent out an email and probably even a devotional on these things as well. But what is our kind of focus for this year, and what can we be ready for in this why moment of how we do it?
Right. So a couple of our aspects of our mission is how we're going to pursue transformation. One of them is intentional discipleship. Another one is sacrificial mission. And a third one is sincere community. And, every church pursues discipleship and mission and community, but the descriptors are really important, I think, for how we are trying to do what we do. Intentional discipleship and sincere community. So one of the things we're trying to focus on this year is creating a deeper sense of belonging at our church. When we're scattered, we can't be together. Can only have 25% of our sanctuary worth of people, and just all the things we can't do. But what can we do? And one of the things we can do is to be purposeful about how we are formed as disciples. And I think this is super important in our cultural moment, where the expectation that people grow up knowing the basics of the Bible, the fundamentals of the story of the scriptures, some of those givens and assumed things about the foundations of a culture, those are shifting in our nation. And forming someone to be a Christ follower is not something that's just going to happen. Right. It has to be purposeful, intentional. And so that intentional discipleship is through growth groups, through relationships of 3, 4, 5 people, single sex, meeting together and really getting involved in one another's lives and what about the Christian faith, but also providing the support and the challenge toward growth, to being transformed, to being different next year than we are this year.
Yeah.
We're probably not going to deeply be shaped to be different people if we just sit in a pew once a week and give an hour to public worship. That's a wonderful start. It's necessary, but for us to grow, there's other steps underneath that, and being involved in groups of people where you open up your life and let other Christians begin to challenge what you love, challenge what you desire, challenge what you're giving your life to, challenge how you spend. Those kinds of things are what really forms us to be different people. And Mike Farley has done a tremendous job building some resources to give us some tracks, give us some content to shape those conversations. And Cole, I know you've been helping pull those together as well. And that's being launched in the next short while. And I'm hopeful that intentional formation, intentional discipleship is going to change us to be a different church 5 years down the road.
Amen.
in addition to forming new leaders, taking younger leaders and equipping them to be the types of leaders that we say we want through that formation. Another thing is a sincere community that is built around Jesus. So probably every one of us have relationships that are more open to talking about the gospel now than they were a year ago. It probably because everyone's more in touch with their vulnerability than we were a year ago.
Yeah.
Life seems way more fragile when 440,000 Americans have died of a virus in less than a year. I think everybody's life feels more fragile. And so we're more open to where do you find hope in that kind of a disaster. And so we're wanting to give people in our church tools to help build sincere community around who Jesus is. And so friends, neighbors, coworkers, family being drawn together into this material called Christianity Explored, where it's safe to ask questions that maybe you felt intimidated to ask around other Christian people before.
Yeah.
Or you as a Christ follower are intimidated to have an answer about some of these questions that your neighbors might have. And you're going to go through this material together and learn together and form a community that's sincere, doesn't have to pretend, doesn't pose, but questions are okay. It's okay not to know. It's okay to be in process. It's okay to wrestle. And that kind of sincere community around evangelism is another thing that we're giving ourselves to this year. And Pastor Ben is pulling some of those groups together and getting the resources out. So our church, by and large, many of our ministries are pointing toward these two things: getting people into these growth groups, getting people into Christianity Explored groups, so that discipleship and community can really happen.
Yeah.
And not just with people in my friend group, but people who are a little different from me. I think we'll take a look back next year. We look in the rearview mirror. We think, wow, look how we've changed. We can focus on those things. So I'm super hopeful of how we change, how we grow, how we're transformed every year by taking stock and saying, how do we want to be different next year? And then let's plan on how to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super helpful. I'm the person who needs, I just got introduced to like rule of life stuff in the last few years, and mainly because of Mike. He's not a bad influence. He's a good influence. So I'm glad I have those in my life.
Absolutely.
He just learning how like lost I can get in regards that I could do good things. Like I could read the Bible here, or I could, do some spiritual practice or discipline here, but like they don't really have like they don't have a thrust. They don't have like a goal in mind. And I think it's cool to be able to create that together. Say, actually, here's who we want to be this next year.
Right. And being formed in relationship to others, because none of us are an island, and Christian faith is not about being by myself. It's not just me and Jesus, but it's a community that we together look like the body of Christ in the world. And that's not just going to happen by accident.
No, it's not.
So on that rule of life thing, there's this awesome app that I use in my own devotional life that I just found. It's called Lexio 365. Have you guys seen that app?
Oh yeah, and it's great.
It's fantastic. One of my pastor buddies told me about it, and it's phenomenal to lead you through purposeful times for pausing, for reflecting, for asking, for yielding. It's just PRAY. That's their rubric. It's a great app. So if you're kind of feeling stuck about how do you get some traction on being changed, that's a great app to look to, and get people to do it with you.
I found that these apps are Yeah, it's actually taking something that can be like really insidious in like notifications and like the way that these smartphones are kind of changing our brains and actually redeeming them for good. So like I get so many notifications on my phone from so many apps and I just ignore them. But whenever I get like these prayer apps and stuff like that, it like, you know, it surprises me at first, but then I'm like, oh, it like I'm intentionally going to enter into this time now. Like it calls me to action and to encounter God at that point.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We'll try to put a link in the show notes or something like that for that. And then maybe they'll end up being a sponsor. Who knows, you know?
There you go.
Yeah.
Sponsor of our.
So
Our
just throwing
podcast.
things out there. Lectio 365, St. Louis Cardinals, season passes. I mean, wait, what? So Clay, thanks for being with us, man. It's been good
Absolutely.
to chat and to think and to almost, you know, just be able to see kind of a little bit behind the curtain, but also to see kind of what the bigness of what we're doing here. It's not just actually in many ways it's the kind of big picture, the meta, and the hey, here's the groundwork. And I think it's really important for us to see and to know. So I really appreciate that. And so before we go, as we're heading out, I'd love if you have anything that you want to say, or anything that you wanted to touch on but didn't have a chance to, etc.
I guess maybe just if we have a big Jesus, then substantial change is possible. And it's easy to kind of get lost in what we've lost. It's easy to get lost in feeling stuck. But if we have a big Jesus, then real change, real transformation is possible. And that's my hope. That's why I'm in ministry, is I believe it's possible. And I'm excited about seeing people's lives change in our church. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. Amen. That'll preach.
There you go.
Thanks again for being with us, and Pam and Matt as well. And so looking forward to many more of these and having you back on at some point to talk about all sorts of things, all the things.
Awesome. All
Thanks
the things.
again. Yeah. See ya. Thanks for being with us today. It's good to be together. If you want to find out more about Central Pres, please go to our website at centralpres.com or find us on all the social media things with the handle at CPCSTL. Join us next time as we continue to learn and grow together into the family of God. Blessings, friends.